Okay, so welcome again to everybody to the cybersecurity webinar, part of our Moving Forward webinar series. And today we're focusing on cybersecurity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony Glowacki and he is going to kind of run us through the presentation. So Tony, take it away.
Great. Great. Thanks, Mark. Let's see, we got, oops. All right. Good morning, everyone. As Mark said, I'm Tony Glowacki. I'm the owner of the local TeamLogic IT franchise. I've been in uh, the technology arena since I graduated from college, which I'm not going to tell you when. It was a long, long time ago. Um, the and I've gone from everything from writing code up to writing, starting companies that developed systems that end users used, and now I'm doing this, providing IT support for small companies and locally. So happy to be here. Happy to kind of kick off this series for the chamber. Uh, Big shout out to Amy. I've been known Amy for a few years now as being involved in some of the chamber things. So it's a good organization and we're big supporters. Um, so we're going to go through cybersecurity and try to, as Mark said, demystify it a bit. Um, I, the as you'll see in the presentation, I do try to do that. I had a long career of being able to try to translate the complexity of information systems to make them more highly usable by the folks that I'm working with. And hopefully through this presentation, I can give you some insight into cybersecurity and do just what Mark said, demystify it a little bit. Um, so what we're going to cover is we're going to just take a quick look at the landscape for small businesses and organizations, and specifically, what does it mean? Why are you targets? Those sorts of things. What are the common threats that are out there? I think it's sort of key to know that, because the threats that were here 10 years ago aren't the same threats today. And what you need to do is do things differently because the threats have changed. And it's not you all's job necessarily to keep up with that. And so sometimes organizations keep doing things the same way and the environment changes and you find out that you're not covered. And so it's essential today in this area to keep up to date with how that is evolving. Really going to focus in on the importance of employee training. And there's a concept out there that's called the superhuman firewall. And so I think that it's I'll stop and kind of talk about that in the context of cybersecurity. The the and then I'll go into some of the key practices for safeguarding your organization, and then just take a brief look at what some of the software solutions that are out there. At any point, if you want to ask a question, I've tried to make the presentation short so that I just give you the good information that you're looking for, to sort of give you the key points and allow time for questions. So put the questions in the box, and Mark will make sure that we cover those. All right. So the landscape for small businesses and organizations. What's happening today is that the larger companies and organizations, they've been targets for a number of years. And so they've done what's called harden their organizations from the threats that are out there. It's so the bad actors note that, and so what they do is they've been drilling down and going after organizations that maybe not have not had the time or the resources to go after this sort of initiative, and they don't have the resource, and the bigger companies make it more difficult. And most of what happens in cybersecurity is it's the same as the basic crime that you see in the broader world is that if you don't protect yourself, the bad actors are looking for that. And so what they do is they don't just any of these things that are coming after organizations, they aren't coming after just one organization. So if your organization gets hit with some of this stuff, you kind of think, oh, why are they coming after me? And that's not really the case. What technology offers you the capability to do is to go at hundreds of organizations at the same time. And so what they're just doing is they're looking for the ones that are vulnerable. And so there's an old technology that's been in use for 15 plus years that was the original way that you protected yourself from this, and that's called a VPN, a virtual private network. And so they'll just scan virtual private networks to figure out which ones are vulnerable. And the way they do that is they actually look at something. If you don't know this terminology, it's key to the protection part. It's called a firewall, and they'll look at whether that firewall's been patched, whether it's an old firewall, all those sorts of basic little things that I'll talk to as we go through here. And they just try to find the ones that are the most vulnerable. So there's two that I'm really familiar with. One's called WatchGuard, and the other's called SonicWall. And SonicWall just had a major uh, situation 2 weeks ago that they needed. We brought this to our attention. They needed an immediate patch of the device because there was a vulnerability that was exposed. And if you're not under, if you're, we go into companies all the time and they haven't, they don't even know they have a firewall, and then they don't know that they have a license for that firewall. And so they haven't kept that license up to date, and there's no ability to patch it. So it puts you in a really precarious situation. There's a next concept that, hey, we're a small organization, and why would anybody come after us? Um, there's two things of that. One is there's truth in it, in that generally, once you get over 20 people in your organization, you start to become a bigger target just because you have more email addresses, you have a website, you just have a larger sort of presence in the world when you start to get over 20. And certainly over 50, uh, you you just start to just become a bigger target. And so that too small, certainly at 5 or 10 might be true, but at 20 or 30 or 40 starts to not be true anymore. And the misconception of too small is also that all we read in the news is that, hey, Bank of America got hacked and it cost them $100 million, or a school software organization that I know pretty well got hacked and they basically ransomware their whole client base. So we hear of those big things, but we don't hear when a small wealth management firm gets ransomed for $30,000. And they look at the organization, they see it's 5 or 10 people or 20 people. They know that their cybersecurity insurance will pay that, and so they attack them. And so that misconception of being too small is very key to understanding the landscape. And finally, just what I said, it's those financial and reputational impacts are really critical to your business. And what happens is that from that financial aspect, the bad actors understand that. And so they are the ones that know, hey, I'm not going to ransom you for $1 million. Like I just said, they're going to do you for 20 because they know you can pay it. So, so it's very key to set that, to understand the landscape that we have, and that it's just a focus we all need to look at. So what are some of the threats? And the big ones are phishing attacks, um, social engineering, malware, insider threats, and weak passwords and unpatched software. Now, this, as I mentioned prior, these are different today. The threat vectors 10, 50 years ago, you had a firewall around your organization, you had a VPN, you were using software that was generally within the organization. Now, as we're moving to the cloud hardens your organization just in its nature, and that when you're using, say, QuickBooks online, they're protecting it. QuickBooks is protecting it. When you're using your email or Word, Microsoft is protecting that. When you're using Adobe, they're protecting it. Or when you're using something that from a construction aspect or a banking application, your third party vendor that you're accessing in the cloud is protecting you from the bad actors. And so the threats change. So now they know, the bad actors know that. And what they're trying to do is get you not to get into your organization, because there's nothing in your organization when you're moving to the cloud in a big way. Uh, and they try to get you to come out of your email application and give information to them that they can use. This then leads into the phishing attacks and the social engineering. There's one that's an interesting one to go through is, and it's the reason we call it social engineering is they use that the nature of your interaction within your business to get to expose a vulnerability. And so here's an example of it. You get a text from somebody that says, "Hey, I want to buy 10 gift cards and I want to give them to my employee." The bad actor doesn't know that that's meaningful to you. Uh, they get a whole bunch of numbers, and phone numbers are exposed now, and it used to not be that way. So that's the evolving threat. You used to not be able to get people's mobile numbers. Now you can get them. And so if any of you have seen, like, where you get these random texts from somebody that just says, "Hey, how you doing? We haven't seen each other in a while." Your number is exposed somewhere, and they are trying to see if your number is active. Now you take it to the example I was just giving, where you get this text that says, "I want to buy 10 gift cards." You've been texting with another number in your organization. They don't know that you have a relationship with Sarah, and Sarah's in the finance department, and she's the one that does the gift cards, or she's a salesperson and she's asked for gift cards before. You just see it and you think, "Oh, this is an appropriate ask in my organization." And they don't lead and say, "Hey, Mark, hey, Bob." They just say, "Hey, I want to buy 10 gift cards." And then you respond back and say yes, and they send you a link, because now you think you're dealing with somebody you know. And they send you a link, you go buy those gift cards, and all of a sudden they've just got you for the 10 gift cards. And so that's the social engineering. And you're like, how do they do that? Well, they do it because they know that we're all using our phones these days. They know that there's that on in the texting environment, we aren't as formal all the time. And sometimes we're just alerting people, "Hey, I'm on my way," or "running a little late," or "meet you for dinner." And so they use that social aspect of what we're doing to 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 expose vulnerability. Malware is something we've heard for years, but they're doing some new stuff there. You get these pop-ups in your browser and it tells you to go do something. And you're like, how are they doing that? Well, they're not violating your environment. They aren't getting into your anything of yours at that point. All they've done is co-opted your browser and used a feature in the browser to do some pop-ups. And then they're trying to get you to do something off of that. And so it looks really scary. We call it scareware. And they're dealt with very simply by just restarting your browser or restarting your computer. So it looks scary, but it isn't. Um, you get insider threats these days where the big breach I was just talking about that's notable right now, that insider threat, this was actually a support person in the Philippines whose account information was compromised. And then they used that because that person was a developer. They used that to expose a vulnerability internal within a relatively big company, and they attacked through that vulnerability. And so they used an insider to do bad things. And then the final thing to really think about is that it's just weak passwords and unpatched software. Uh, we see all the time computers that haven't been patched in 2 or 3 years, um, and they haven't been rebooted in a long time. And and so we can just assume that they're also using the the password 1234 West Street, Annapolis, ABC, that sort of thing. And so those passwords, there's simple things that you can do is just make your passwords more stronger, use a password manager, use the basic stuff to just patch your computers. Uh, so what the first so what do we do about this? And I think that employees are uh, the the most important thing in small businesses today, and the evolution of that is important because we've all probably either come into the business world or been around in the business world where we've had IT support. We could call Mark or Kevin or Sally, and they could help us with this. And so we're we've been in that world for a long time, but the threats have changed. And now it's not Sally's responsibility because she's in IT or Bob's responsibility because he runs IT or he helps out with this. It's more your responsibility. And we just had a situation a couple weeks ago that and this wasn't nefarious, but the the in a client's environment, an employee had gone and read had copied files from one place to another in the organization. And they have a rather sophisticated structure. And so it kind of caused a lot of internal aggravation with what they were storing. And we were asked after after the incident, hey, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And in this case, the employee had received at least 3 notifications to proceed forward. And so eh, once you get to that point, there's nothing you can do from a technology standpoint because the employee was being prompted to, do you really want to do this? Because this is outside what you really want to do. And they press the yes, 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 and yeah, it caused kind of a big issue. The same thing applies in cybersecurity is that as an employee, the employee is the most responsible thing. And it gets back to those new ways that people are using the new cybersecurity or threat vectors that I talk about, the employee pays the is the most important thing. And so the role of the employee's changed. That employee's actions are important versus 15 years ago was more IT actions that were the most important thing. And what we like to say to just define this new role that the employee plays is the employee needs to be a superhuman firewall. And and so how do you do that? How do you create employees that are superhuman firewalls? Well, in employee training, cybersecurity training, it's incredibly important. Mortgage companies, banks, they have training that individuals have to go through every year to make sure they're certified and that they're aware of all the new regulations and mortgages and certainly carpenters and builder and construction firms need to know what they're doing if they're doing more sophisticated construction. All employees need cybersecurity training now. And and the reason for that is that as I've mentioned and will continue to mention, threat vectors have changed. They're more sophisticated, just as Chat GPT adds to your knowledge, it also adds to theirs. Um, and so you need to have a training program in place that constantly updates the phishing awareness to recognize what's going on and avoid these messages, to understand how texts are being used today in this social engineering defense area to understand. Look, if you get a text that doesn't say your name in it, it's probably not good. And you probably want to avoid doing anything on it other than slide, delete, move on. Don't even think about it. If you see a text from an unknown number, just delete it, move on. Safe internet browsing. This isn't as big of an issue as it was, say, 10 years ago, but you still can be tricked into going to a site you shouldn't go to and downloading something. And then the real key of all of this is that this stuff's evolving. And for most of us in the business world, it's not what our main job is. We're trying to get done what we need to get done. And so in organizations, you want to make sure that people report stuff right away. And in that case, you need to have a place where they can report it because the faster that a knowledgeable source can get in there and understand what's happened and then put in place, uh, start to address that, the less damage that's going to be done. So a simple little thing, a employee's computer gets exposed. You take that computer off the internet and you take it off the internal internet so that any bad actor can't get from that exposed computer to a fellow employee's computer or a, a company or organization's network. And then you address what the issue was on that computer when it's not connected to the internet. And so the faster that that happens when an incident is reported, the less problems that are potential to result from it. And so you want to encourage people not to be bashful. And I always say when someone comes, oh, I know I shouldn't have done that. Yes, okay, sure. But it's better that you called than you said that you tried to hide it because we want to know, we want to fix the problem. And so all that it's really that incident reporting, that culture inside the organization that you address this stuff is really important. And that then leads to, okay, we do all these things. You need to have a continuous training just with everything because it's the threat vectors get updated, change. You need to address those changes with updated training. You need to make it, not this dry stuff that like IT guys up there are just talking about incident reporting and safe internet browsing, but you make it fun and you gamify the learning. You do it simulations. You send out phishing emails that are are geared towards getting you to trip up on them, and then you follow up with that saying, "Hey, uh, Kevin, you went in and you did X. And fortunately, that was a simulation. Nothing happened, but here's what you should note in the future." And that just leads to the bottom thing. When you make things important in your organization, you develop a culture around that. So it's really key that all organizations establish a cybersecurity culture today. Even in our case of our smallest client, we have clients with a couple employees. We work with them to establish that culture so that they feel good about just calling us. So other key practices. Now this gets to the details of what we like to see. And so one, you implement strong access control. Most everybody's heard of multi-factor authentication. You should have that on every system that you have. And it's regardless of whether in the workplace or whether at home. It's so key to have that. Your bank should have it. Um, your school should, your children's school, your anything where you have an account, it should have multi-factor authentication. No one should ever be asking you for a password to get into your account to help you with something. It's just not. That's just a big red flag. And then for organizations, role-based security is so cool. And it is from it's kind of a buzzword, but it just means that in an organization, only those people that should have access to something have access. So, you have data on a server up in the cloud in Microsoft, and it's financial data. Well, only the two or three people in the organization that deal with financial data should have access to that. That's role-based security. Firewalls, the basic, everybody should have a firewall, and it's just a necessary thing. Data protection and best practices, back up your data, secure the data so that it has a hardened wall around it. In networks, firewalls, secure Wi-Fi. It's kind of like, what does that mean? Well, secure Wi-Fi, we see this happens, it's almost once a week in our environment, and certainly more than that across the network that we're part of. You go into any firewall, any Wi-Fi at a Starbucks or a Rise Up Coffee or a Whole Foods that's not secure, your token where you're logged into, say, Microsoft Word or Microsoft email, they can grab that token off an unsecure Wi-Fi, and they can log into your account using that token. It's a relatively sophisticated process that they go to. It's very simple to we see it, we see what happened, and we can clean it up really quickly, but it all comes from unsecure Wi-Fi. And then the other in network security is cloud services. The more you use cloud service applications, small businesses that use like QuickBooks, and they're so locked in on, hey, we only like the desktop QuickBooks application. Well, it's an old application. It doesn't have what's called code level security. It is a move to get up into QuickBooks Online. It takes effort, but that's where everybody should be focused. And then regular maintenance, software patches, rebooting, monitoring, those are all key practices in the area. Additionally, building on this, even if you're a small organization, you should have an incident response plan, even if it is just something that the 4 or 5 people know, hey, if this happens, this is what we should do. And and so it's breach happens. Hey, looks like my account was hacked. You know, uh, you want your fellow employee to make sure that they knew that and to see if there's anything coming at them that seems out of the ordinary from what happened to one employee and what might transmit to the next. So even smaller organizations should actually just have something very basic, in that anytime something like this, you got weekly meetings and something happened during the week, you kind of talk about it. We have a small client down in at the airport down in Easton, and they have a small office, and they are always talking about new things that they see happening to each other, and they are literally feet from each other. And so they can talk to each other on it. Hey, did you just see this? And so that they have a culture, but they also know that if they ever see these things, they know to get in touch with us. Uh, so it's a just to have that plan, to just be talking about it internally, so that if something does happen, it at least isn't as scary as it is because you're all talking about it. All right, so the the final thing I wanted to sort of talk about is that in cybersecurity, there's software solutions that organizations can employ, and in the uh, just like the threat vectors have changed, the approach has changed. So we've all the approach to protect your organization. So the kind of funny how that got a random E in here. Um, the the as the threat vectors have changed, so is the software, and it's so important to kind of understand this because some of the malware you see out there, and it's probably think we see it in our environment. It's like 80% of the computers are this way. Don't understand why it's happening, but the vendors that yeah, the Lenovo's and Dell's and uh, HP's, the computers come with McAfee installed on it, and so you actually start to get these little pop-ups that say buy McAfee software, or you'll see Norton from back in the day they were one of the first companies to do anything in this. All of those applications, the older applications, they protect you from the threat vectors, the threats that were happened yesterday. And all the nefarious characters know that. And so they have these big repositories of data to know that if this happens, this is what they're trying to do, A, B, C, D. The majority of the bad stuff that happens today is from something that's called zero-day attacks. And it simply means this, that the attack is in its first day. And so it's the day zero. And so all of that old uh, protection software that's out there, it doesn't address a zero-day attack because they've never seen it before. And zero-day attacks are the real the scary ones because you have no protection against it, and they're coming fast and furious because just like any of you might be using Chat GPT, I have one or two windows open, and I'm sort of developing my own little agent with Chat GPT there that I can ask things. The bad actors are doing the same thing. They're producing more code, more attacks, all those sorts of things. And so the way you protect yourself against those attacks is that you have what is the cybersecurity software solution for today. It starts with endpoint detection response. And so your endpoints, your computer, your phone, your firewall, those need to be monitored, and they need to constantly be monitored for threats, whether you're doing it yourself or there's an organization that's supporting you or you have an IT group, they are actively monitoring your devices for threats. And then with that active monitoring, because these things don't happen on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. They happen Friday night at 9 o'clock while you're trying when you want to go on vacation. And all of a sudden you're trying to get a little bit done because you're going to be gone for a week, and boom, you get a phishing attack that just blows up your computer, and you're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? You don't know what to do. It's Friday night at 9 o'clock. Active endpoint detection response is monitoring that. Most likely, that process would have already seen the bad thing that was happening, and they're responding to it in real time. The other thing that EDR does is that it enhances your endpoint security visibility, kind of cool language. But what that really means is that you know it's there, your organization knows it's there, the bad actors know it's there, and the monitoring of it knows it's there. And so it just creates an awareness. And you see those sorts of things where you start to see, oh, it is 9 o'clock on Friday night. Oh yeah, that is real. That is it's just ruined my night, maybe my Saturday, but hopefully it won't ruin your whole vacation. And so that endpoint detection is really an active measure to deal with these. What we see in our environment is that there's another layer that is more important for bigger organizations. We start to talk about it when you get over, say, 20 employees, but probably closer to 50, it becomes essential. And it's managed detection response. And in that, it combines technology with human experience. And so that endpoint detection gives you the instantaneous knowledge that something's happening. Managed detection gives you that instantaneous activity with a knowledgeable party that it's generally human oriented to get in and quickly figure out, is this a 0-day attack? What are they trying to do? Because even in a 0-day attack environment, the strategies they're using to cause the problems are similar. And so they're just doing it in a new and unique way, but they're still trying to get after the same old, same old. And so the human gets in and figures out, did they attack one? Did they attack two? Did they attack three? And a simple sort of thing gets back to that Wi-Fi example I used. When we see that someone's their email account has been uh, corrupted by or exposed by an attack that where they co-opted the token, couple things happen. One, they generally access your contacts list. They start sending out massive emails from that list. Uh, it's super scary, but it's really easy to shut down. And you simply get in, you cancel all the logouts, because generally what happens in that situation is you're logged in from your computer in Annapolis, Maryland. The bad actors logged in from New York or Shanghai or Manila or Phoenix, and we know you're a small company, and there's no way you're logged in Phoenix. And so you easily can get in and kick some of these things out. Where it gets a little more sophisticated is when they put rules in to your Microsoft environment that allows them to do their bad stuff. Uh, it's still generally easy to fix, but you need a human in there to do it. You can't do it in an automated fashion. Managed detections there 24/7, so they're there at 9 o'clock at night, and it just flows. The problems flow through to the folks that are going to fix it. And then, of course, it reduces response time. A lot of players in the market up there. Sophos, SentinelOne, Palo Alto, CrowdStrike. Um, there's some really good organizations that are doing good stuff. So just as the threats have advanced, so have the organizations that are helping with that. So just closing thoughts quickly. Um, Cybersecurity is no longer optional, and it is a fundamental necessity in organizations. Cyber threats don't discriminate against small businesses. I kind of framed that at the beginning. Every organization has valuable equipment and data, and a school, their student database. You get, a school has been around 20, 30 years, and someone locks up your student database. Oh my God, uh, you're a ransomware target right there. Having a cybersecurity posture is important. And whether you're two, three, five people or 20 or 50, sure, that posture changes, but it's all focused on sensitive information, assuring if bad things happen, you can still come to work tomorrow and get stuff done. And then you create trust within your organization, within the clients of your organization, that you're going to do the things you need to do, because nobody can protect against everything. I get asked all the time, you put all these things in place and nothing bad's going to happen. I'm quite honest. I said, look, I can't say that. Uh, can say that it's never happened, but I can't say it never will. And what I'm here to do is, in any good provider of services in this area, is to do the things I just said, to put in place all the key things so that you make sure bad things don't happen when you can, but when they do, you can respond. And it's just simple to, as you're trying to develop any sort of thing within your organization as to why this should be important. Getting the financial losses are real, the reputational damage, or when one of your email accounts starts sending out hundreds of emails, that has reputational damage. And it's not that ruins your business, but if you can't tell those clients or those partners that, yeah, we take this seriously and here's what we do. Unfortunately, it didn't work in this case. That's all you can do. We all just put best effort forward. And the more serious thing, there certainly are legal consequences. You definitely need cybersecurity as insurance. All right. So that's the presentation for today.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Hey, has anybody, I have a couple questions, but before I do that, I want to ask our group here, anybody have any questions for Tony? Oh, Victoria, you're still on mute, looks like. There you go.
I have a question. When you're in a hotel or like in a Starbucks working, what would be the advice? Like what protection to have or what not to open? What absolutely, like, can I check my emails and pay my credit card? Go on Facebook, or like, what's a healthy rule?
So the healthy rule is, I would do no financial transactions in a public Wi-Fi. I wouldn't worry as much about your email as that. I would, if you're doing it a lot, I would get one of the virtual private, one of the little software-based VPNs. Norton has a really good one. They're relatively inexpensive. It's like dollars a month sort of thing. But if you're doing that a lot, I'd get a software-based VPN that goes on your machine. Um, I would in it's sort of hard to say don't do financial transactions, but that stuff gets really tricky. We've heard some, just even doing PayPal, the social engineering stuff that I talked about, they get really sophisticated around getting into those conversations in a public Wi-Fi with your bank. with a PayPal. So if possible, do any of those things on your phone using not using the Wi-Fi. Using the cellular network.
Okay, so install Norton and check only emails, don't buy Amazon
Not
stuff.
not the Norton that is the virus protection. It's a VPN, so virtual
VPN,
private network.
VPN. Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, let me, before I ask a question to Tony, let me ask the group here, what is going on in your company with cybersecurity? Do you talk about it? Do you have a program in place like that? How about you, Alex, from at Maryland Hall? What do you guys do? Is it something that's talked about, or what's going on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, it is something that we talk about. We have a lot of systems in place since we manage like a lot of different emails. So we have a lot of we mostly use like two-factor authentication for all of our accounts. It's like it's a mandated thing. Everyone has to either, use their phone or use the Microsoft Authenticator app to get into their email and stuff like that. Um, I think that that's, one of the most important things, at least for protecting your accounts. Because if somebody got access to a Maryland Hall email, they could do a lot of damage, so to speak. And I
Yeah.
know that was mentioned in the presentation. But yeah, we talk about it, and I'm the IT coordinator here, so it's mostly my job to worry about it and put policy into practice and stuff like that.
How do you get people to listen?
Um, I mean, it can be pretty hard, but usually, I'm lucky that they listen to me. But with some things like the two-factor authentication, like multi-factor, um, you just have to mandate it. You have to require people to do it. You can't log into your Outlook until you set up the multi-factor authentication. I think that that's the best way, at least with like a medium to small sized or even a large organization, is just making it a requirement.
Okay. How about our friends at,
Okay,
go ahead, Tony.
Mark, a quick follow-up on that one for Alex. I think what I would note I kind of hear how Alex is talking about it. It's that culture you establish in the organization, and that culture is really important. We all think that culture is just about, hey, rah rah rah, and the really good things that happen. Developing a culture in your organization that not only recognizes the good things that are happening, but recognizes we aren't perfect and that we all make mistakes. And so what he's talking about there is they kind of know that, hey, come to Alex, we're putting this posture in place. We got to constantly remind people of the things that they need to do. And that's the sort of thing. You don't look down on people and say, "Oh my God, you got hacked. Why did you do that?" You actually, from an IT perspective, that's when you come into play. That's when your value is the highest, is when you're able to help in a bad situation. And so culture is really not just about the good stuff, but it's about an organization being able to deal with the bad stuff too, in a way that the organization can move forward from, bad things that happen.
Okay. How about restorative health? Gladys, what are you guys doing with cybersecurity? Any thoughts? All right, well, let me ask this out to Tony then. A little bit more on cybersecurity insurance. That's something that can be provided from your commercial insurance carrier?
Yes. So actually, in one quick follow-up, Victoria, the product we suggest is NordVPN. NORD VPN. So so cybersecurity insurance, almost all business insurance has has a cybersecurity component to it. So your it's just how much they are going to start to require you to do things. And so that's really the key that we would talk about these days, is that right now it's kind of a checkbox. You might get some, they might ask you, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you doing this? The larger your organization is, the more quickly that's going to turn into organizations that have to be compliant. It's going to turn into looking more like compliance, that you've got to have a firewall, you've got to have endpoint detection response, you've got to have some of these policies in place. So you're going to start to see that. We thought that would really heat up this year. We're not hearing it as much as we thought, but we are starting to see it. And so I would say the cybersecurity was kind of a nice little add-on that insurance companies would put into your bill back when it was a little bit easier. Now that more and more organizations are becoming targets, and this is happening to more and more organizations, there's going to be a lot more sophistication around making you do certain things.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we covered a lot. Tony, very topical, very practical. This is something we all run into literally every day, logging on. Some interesting thought processes on how to access what to do with your laptop when you're out and about, and protecting yourself. And I guess at a minimum, making sure that you get your dual authentication put in place. Why sometimes it could be a hassle, but having that layer of protection is pretty important. And if you need any additional help, Tony and TeamLogic would be more than glad to help you out like that. So what we'll do is we'll get a copy of the recording out to you. And then also we'll get a copy of the PowerPoint. So you'll have that. You'll have contact information for Tony if you want to do any follow-up. So with that, anybody have anything else? Anybody running out buying snow shovels? Getting ready for a little dusting this afternoon. It might be a little bit more than a dusting, but anyway. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today, and